Hello, and welcome to this review of chapter 3 in the book. It's a very bright and sunny day here. I hope I can see what I'm doing anyway. As usual in the books in the seminar, the chapters contain a lot of information, and to go into all of it in a meaningful way, to expand a little bit on all the ideas, would probably take 6 hours. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about how thought enters into perception and changes perception. So in a very basic idea about thought changing perception is if you see a person, or if a child sees a person, that is all right, but thought can add something to our perception. That's my father. And that is a crucial difference. It's my father. Or we can say that's an enemy, or that is not a friend, or that is a friend. We can add those kind of things to perception. And usually we perhaps are not aware of that. We think that's the way things are. But if, as Bohm points out, if we can't tell the difference between what we are adding, inferring, then this cooperation between thought and perception is the cause of a lot of confusion, illusion and deception. So first, a little bit of background. In the seminar, in order to get a better picture, I think Bohm points out a few things as a background story. He says that we are naturally inclined to learn. When we watch a child experiment with life, that's a good example of this, constantly learning, experiencing, trying to figure out. And children are very creative. They try things in unexpected ways. And while we are learning, we are of course perceiving, and while we are learning, knowledge appears. So knowledge is a form of extension or an inevitable result of perception or learning. But the accumulation of knowledge is not the same activity as learning. So knowledge is in many cases a highly valuable or highly valued byproduct of learning. The value of learning itself can clearly be seen in many work fields or many various fields. We have often mentioned surgery. It's a it's a field with highly accumulated knowledge. Whether you agree with it or not, it is based on knowledge. So in these chapters we have observed and learned about how we can intentionally disturb the system. We can put thoughts about things that are not actually happening and still trigger, for instance, our feelings. And that way we have something to observe. And the problem that we want to make visible has to do with the fact of how thought generally functions. It does not show the core of the process. The system doesn't show the thought behind the movement that is going on. Rather, it just shows us what is happening. For instance, I'm angry, that is what is happening. But the thought behind it does not appear to the mind. But once the anger is appearing, thought comes in and reacts and sees the anger either as something independent of thought, probably something that somebody said, but you can see this clearly in an example that Bohm gives. If somebody comes and says something nasty to you in a foreign language that you don't understand, there is no response from the system in that case. It doesn't trigger a reflex. So that which responds, the core of the system, is thought about information or input or an event that is presented to it. And the system is working on its own. If we don't have external stimulus, we have internal imagination based on the same thoughts. And we have to be able to see this, says Bohm, in order to proceed. He says, imagine a religion without books, without traditions, without beliefs, without churches, no priests. If you have such a religion, people wouldn't know what they were supposed to be doing or for what purpose. So the thought, the structure of thought is behind it. It's also important to see that these initial thoughts spread out in many forms all over the world. For instance, if we have a thought or a belief or a tradition, we also find it in written form, in books. We see it on television. You can send information via radio waves. You can have many forms of spreading the information that you have or believe in. And many people will pick it up, and it becomes part of their reflexes. Perhaps it doesn't mean that they suddenly change their religion, but they might find something that is reasonable, agreeable, or they might find something that is irritating or that they react negatively to. Part of why we don't know these things already, why it is not common knowledge, for instance, that thought is hiding the main part of the chain of cause and effect, is because our culture says that it's not important to go into, it's not important to go after this stuff. It's only intellectual babble, it's not applicable to practical daily life, or it doesn't work in society. It doesn't really cause anything. So, that's a little bit of background information. And how does all of this operate in our perception? What we see, what we feel, think, hear. How does this operate here? So Bohm says, thought, it works as a representation. An image stands in for something, like a symbol. So we must be aware of, are we observing a thing or are we observing a symbol? If we don't know that, then our symbols begin to appear as something else than thought, something external, something independent. And that is how we can come to the situation where we are fighting with our own symbols, values, creations, and so forth. And in order to understand what goes wrong, Bohm suggests we should have some understanding of how it would work when it's right. So he says something like, thought works automatically in a sense, the larger part of it. But when you are thinking now, in the present tense, in the present moment, something more is coming in. So it's not just the thought, something more is coming in. I mean, the whole being has a lot to offer, so something more is coming in. It's ready to look at the situation and change thought if it's necessary. We could say that thinking is something that is alive, it's not entirely conditioned, it has a trace of intelligence or sensitivity in it. It can do a lot of good things when it's working properly. And this is one of the points that I stress to myself a lot, the sensitivity towards intelligence when we are thinking. What is the system doing? Trying to connect and branch out. Something doesn't seem right. What is the connection to the rest of the system? So it's important to see how thinking is working when it's not deceiving us. Bohm also says that healthy thinking, healthy thought, has intrinsic in it an openness built into it. So if you look at, for instance, political thoughts, they seem to have very little to do with being open to something. Rather, they seem to want to get rid of everything that is unknown. If we are not aware if thought is operating properly or not, we might begin, not just might, but if we are not aware whether thought is operating properly or not, we begin to feel according to how we think, just like we can feel a table or an object when we touch it with our hand. So we have this fact that thought affects perception, it is part of it, it merges with it, they operate together. And Bohm gives an example of proprioception. Proprioception, in this case, is the ability to tell whether I was burnt by the fire by an accident or if I put my hand in the fire. If I can't tell which, then I'm in trouble. Did I touch the stove, or did the stove somehow attack me? Stoves can't do that, but anyway. So Bohm says that when thought enters perception, if we are not able to tell this difference, did I do it? Was it my intention? Is it my idea? Is it my thought that is shaping or giving cause to the events that follow? If we can't tell this difference, if we are not aware of it, that thought is entering perception, then we are very, very close to the fundamental error in thought. Of course, David Bohm, having the mind that he has, is of course he's chasing this, if you can find a root cause, like time or... but he says that if we are not aware that thought is entering perception or when it's happening and how it's functioning, then we are very close to the fundamental error in thought. So, again, if we are not aware of what we infer or add to perception, we are going to have feelings according to what we think. We, you and me and others who are interested in this complication and thinking about it, reading about it, we know or accept or have come to believe that there is a system operating. So Bohm suggests, because of that, we should be, or thought should be, able to tell whether or not it's participating. This is proprioception. It is a name for if I know that this is the result, what is happening is the result of my intention, of my doing, of my thinking, or it is not. And in general, a big problem in the world is that thought doesn't know this. So, if it is not clear to us what we infer to perception, our accumulated knowledge, we have so much of it, it becomes the most important part of our perception. In spiritual circles, we often hear that something like pure perception or pure awareness is very important. It's a similar line of reasoning. And Bohm suggests that with proprioception in place, we wouldn't carry on with these mistakes because we see clearly that we are behaving erratically. So instead of being an extension to our perception, which is a good way of putting it, I think, thought begins to act as if it is in control of what we perceive. We are trying to modify our perception that we ourselves are causing. So you could say that we begin to assume things when we really should think that we don't know. We begin to ignore things when we really should look into it further. We develop some kind of common sense about things, but we should really have clarity that we are contributing to the situation. Other examples of things that we infer could be much more complex matters that will be discussed in the last two chapters. We have, for instance, the creation of the observer and the observed. Time is a big subject. The self, also a big subject. And many more of these classical philosophical questions that have to do with being confused about our perception. Bohm suggests that the idea of objectivity is the idea that thought is not participating at all. If thought is not participating in what we see at all, then we can be objective about what we are seeing or what we are expressing. Now, Bohm suggests also that thoughts are appearances that appear to the mind. And we must be able to distinguish between correct appearances and incorrect appearances. The correct ones are related to reality. They are related to reality is a good word, but the incorrect ones, they are not relating to reality. They are off on some other kind of path. Something unreal is going on. And just like there is such a thing as a correct appearance to the eye, the flower is, I see it, it's a correct appearance to the eye, even if the flower ultimately could be considered as being made of atoms and smaller things. The fact that I'm seeing it, it's appearing correctly. And there is such a thing as thought that is done rightly. And if thought is done rightly, it's retaining its relation to reality. Okay, that's all for now. In the second part of chapter 3, I will discuss some of the flaws in the system that makes us think not very straight. And this information, of course, also goes into our perception and makes it a very strange thing. Okay, thanks for listening.